Duško Popov was not supposed to be a hero. He did not look like one, did not behave like one, and certainly did not live like one. While Europe was being torn apart by war, Popov was seen in luxury hotels, expensive casinos, and elite nightclubs. Champagne glasses in his hands, beautiful women by his side, and an almost careless smile on his face. This was the image he carefully crafted. But behind that glamorous lifestyle was one of the most dangerous and effective double agents of World War II, Espionage. Born in 1912 in Yugoslavia to a wealthy family, Duško Popov grew up with privilege, education, and international connections. He studied law in Germany and later in France, becoming fluent in several languages. It was during his time in Germany in the 1930s that he first witnessed the rise of Nazism. Unlike many who were either blinded by ideology or too afraid to resist, Popov despised the Nazi regime. This hatred would later become the fuel for his work as a spy. When World War II began, Popov was recruited by German intelligence, the Abwehr. To them, he seemed like a perfect candidate, well-connected, intelligent, charming, and motivated by money and pleasure. They believed they had found an ideal agent who could operate freely across Europe. What they did not know was that Popov had no intention of serving Hitler. Instead of remaining loyal to Germany, Popov secretly contacted British intelligence. MI6 quickly realized what a rare opportunity they had been given. Popov was not just willing to betray the Nazis, he was willing to play them. Thus began his life as a double agent, operating under British control while pretending to work for Germany. Popov's greatest weapon was not a gun or a coded message, but his personality. He lived loudly and recklessly on purpose, gambling thousands of dollars in a single night, openly attracting attention, and behaving like a spoiled playboy made him seem unreliable, which paradoxically made him more believable as a spy, motivated purely by self-interest. The Germans trusted him because they believed they understood him. Under the codename Tricycle, Popov was used by MI6 as part of a broader deception strategy. His job was to feed the Nazis carefully crafted false information, while mixing in enough truth to maintain credibility. Every detail was calculated. Every lie was designed to shape German decisions at the highest levels. One of Popov's most critical contributions came in the lead-up to D-Day. The Allies needed to convince Hitler that the invasion of Europe would not occur in Normandy, but somewhere else, specifically the Pas-de-Calais. Through Popov and other agents, the Germans were fed convincing reports about fake armies, false troop movements, and invented military plans. These deceptions worked. Even after the Allied landings began in Normandy, Hitler hesitated to move his reserves, believing the real invasion was still coming elsewhere. Popov was also sent to the United States as part of his mission. There he encountered the FBI and its director, J. Edgar Hoover. Unlike British intelligence, Hoover deeply mistrusted Popov. His lifestyle, arrogance, and lack of discipline irritated the FBI director, who refused to fully cooperate with British plans involving Popov. This tension limited how effectively Popov could operate in America, despite the vital intelligence he carried. One of the most controversial moments in Popov's career involved information related to Pearl Harbor. German intelligence had asked Popov to gather details about American naval defenses in Hawaii. Popov passed this request to the British, who in turn attempted to warn U.S. authorities. However, the warning was not taken seriously, and history took its tragic course. Whether Pearl Harbor could truly have been prevented remains debated, but Popov's role in the story adds a chilling layer to the events. Throughout the war, Popov lived constantly on the edge. If the Germans had uncovered his true loyalty, his death would have been swift and brutal. Yet he maintained his cover with extraordinary confidence. He manipulated perceptions, exploited enemy weaknesses, and used his own flaws as camouflage. After the war ended, Popov quietly faded from the world of espionage. Unlike many war heroes, he received little public recognition at the time. His story remained classified for years. It was only later that connections between Popov and Ian Fleming became widely known. Fleming, who worked in British naval intelligence, had observed Popov and was fascinated by his lifestyle and personality. Many historians now agree that Popov was a major inspiration for the character of James Bond. But unlike Bond, Popov's story had no dramatic music, no cinematic ending, and no public applause. His victories happened in silence. His successes were measured not in medals, but in decisions the enemy made based on lies he carefully planted. Duško Popov proved that espionage was not always about shadows and secrecy. Sometimes the most effective spy was the one standing in plain sight, laughing, gambling, and pretending not to care about anything at all. By the middle of the war, Duško Popov had become far more valuable to British intelligence than even they initially expected. He was no longer just a conduit for false information, he was a psychological weapon. German intelligence officers believed him to be unreliable, greedy, and impulsive, yet paradoxically loyal to their cause. This contradiction made him dangerous. They underestimated his discipline because they misunderstood his character. MI6 carefully constructed Popov's reports to the Abwehr. Each message followed a precise balance. Too much truth would endanger Allied operations. Too many lies would destroy credibility. Popov delivered these reports with confidence, often embellishing them with personal opinions, complaints, and emotional remarks. These human details made the intelligence feel authentic. The Germans were not just reading data, they were reading a man. Popov's role expanded into what later became known as the double-cross system, one of the most successful counterintelligence operations in history. Britain controlled nearly every German spy operating on its soil. Through agents like Popov, the Allies shaped German perceptions of the war, influencing where troops were stationed, which threats were taken seriously, and which were ignored. Despite his apparent freedom, Popov lived under constant surveillance. German handlers tested him repeatedly, checking his stories, watching his behavior, and looking for inconsistencies. A single mistake, a wrong date, a misplaced name could have exposed everything. To survive, Popov relied on his memory, improvisation, and nerve. He memorized fictional spy networks, invented personalities, and fabricated detailed backstories without hesitation. His lifestyle was not merely indulgence. It was camouflage. Casinos, parties, and extravagant spending reinforced the illusion that he cared only about pleasure. In reality, every move was calculated. Even his affairs were sometimes encouraged by British handlers, knowing that scandal and excess made him appear less capable of disciplined betrayal. Yet this life came at a cost. Popov was never fully trusted by anyone. To the Germans, he was a useful but morally weak asset. To the British, he was indispensable but dangerous. He was monitored almost as closely by MI6 as he was by the Abwehr. Trust in espionage was never absolute. The stress of living multiple identities began to take its toll. Popov could never relax completely. A knock at the door, an unexpected question, or a sudden change in plans could signal the end. Unlike soldiers on the front lines, spies fought a war without uniforms, without comrades, and without recognition. As the Allied invasion approached, Popov's work reached its peak importance. Through him and other double agents, German command became convinced that Allied forces were massing in Britain, not to attack Normandy, but to strike elsewhere. Even as Allied troops landed on French beaches, German high command hesitated. This delay saved countless lives and allowed the invasion to succeed. Popov later reflected that this period was the most dangerous of his life. The stakes were absolute. If the deception failed, the invasion could collapse, and the war might be prolonged by years. His false reports had to be flawless. When the war finally ended, Popov expected neither fame nor gratitude, and that is exactly what he received. His contributions remained classified. Unlike generals and politicians, spies returned quietly to civilian life. Popov married, built a family, and attempted to live normally. Though normality after such a life was difficult, only decades later did fragments of his story emerge. When historians began uncovering the depth of Allied deception operations, Popov's name resurfaced. Interviews, documents, and memoirs revealed the extent of his influence. The comparison to James Bond, once speculative, became widely accepted. Ian Fleming had indeed known of Popov and admired his audacity, yet Popov himself rejected the glamour. He insisted that real espionage was not heroic, only necessary. There were no villains in black uniforms or dramatic confrontations, only paperwork, patience and fear. His victories were invisible, and that was the point. Duško Popov died in 1981, long before the full scope of his work became public knowledge. Today, historians recognize him as one of the most effective double agents of World War II. He did not win battles, command armies, or sign treaties. Instead, he changed decisions, and in war, decisions can mean everything. In the years after World War II, Duško Popov struggled with something many intelligence operatives faced: silence. While the world celebrated victory, rebuilt cities, and honored soldiers, Popov carried memories that could not be shared. The success of his missions depended on secrecy, and that secrecy did not end with the war. His achievements remained locked behind classified files and unspoken agreements. Popov attempted to distance himself from espionage. He focused on business ventures, family life, and personal stability. Yet the habits formed during the war never fully disappeared. He remained observant, cautious, and deeply skeptical of appearances. Years of deception had taught him the truth was rarely visible on the surface. As time passed, Popov began to reflect on the nature of his work. He did not see himself as a hero, but neither did he see himself as a manipulator without purpose. In his view, espionage was a necessary response to a world at war. Lies, when used strategically, could save lives. This moral complexity haunted many intelligence officers, and Popov was no exception. During the Cold War, interest in World War II intelligence operations slowly resurfaced. Governments began declassifying selected documents, and historians gained access to long-hidden archives. Popov's role emerged gradually, often mentioned in footnotes, before being recognized as central to some of the Allies' greatest deceptions. Public fascination with spies grew, fueled by novels and films. James Bond became a global icon, confident, charming, and seemingly invincible. Journalists and historians searched for real-life inspirations behind the character, and Popov's name appeared repeatedly. His lifestyle, confidence, and willingness to operate in extreme danger closely mirrored Fleming's fictional creation. Yet Popov remained uncomfortable with the comparison. He emphasized that real espionage was far less glamorous. There were no dramatic escapes or final showdowns, only long periods of uncertainty, paperwork, and psychological pressure. Mistakes were not forgiven. Failure meant death, not a sequel. What made Popov exceptional was not just his courage, but his understanding of human behavior. He recognized that intelligence work was as much about perception as information. By becoming exactly what the enemy expected him to be, he controlled how they interpreted reality. This skill, manipulating belief rather than facts, proved devastatingly effective. Historians now credit Popov as a crucial component of the broader Allied deception strategy. His reports influenced German troop deployments, delayed responses, and reinforced false assumptions at critical moments. Without agents like him, Allied operations would have faced far greater resistance and loss of life. As recognition slowly came, Popov did not seek honors or medals. His satisfaction came from knowing that his work had meaning. He had stood against a regime he despised and contributed quietly to its defeat.